it's 12 months. The aim is to, over the course of 12 months, get to being intentional and confident parents. And this is month one of those 12 months in my parenting community. I'm really excited to have Sam come and tell us about how to share the mental load. And the point is that for each month we tackle really big issues that, you know, we come across as parents. We're often really far too busy, so much going on to really take the time to figure these things out. And a lot of that contributes to that, you know, mental load, emotional load, and some of the overwhelm that we feel in parenting. So my aim with this community was to just allow parents to come together and help each other out, but then also for each of the months to handle one big thing, so that by the end of the year we would know from the experts how we can manage these different aspects. And then throughout the month we can discuss things in the community. So if that is of interest to you, or you're not already in the community, then you can head to, I'm going to pop this in there. I want to introduce Sam Kennedy Christian. Thank you so much, Sam, for being here. And she's going to teach us about the Fair Play method. She's a Fair Play facilitator and also an executive coach. And she founded the Float Space as a spa for the minds of professional mothers, which just sounds absolutely blissful. I don't think I know a mum who wouldn't like or a dad for that matter, who wouldn't like a spa for their mind. Yeah, I definitely need one because mine is slightly off. Very bad night last night, so struggling to find words today. So she helps mums lead teams in charities, not-for-profits, public sector to find more time in their week without paying for extra childcare. My objective today is just briefly introduce the Fair Play method, the system, and I have a suggestion for getting started in your home, which I'll take you to, and to get to know each other, share how we could work together potentially. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions. I got some questions through from Michelle to get us started that I've been mulling over. This is me and my family, and we use bits of the Fair Play method, the bits that work for us. So I'll be sharing that as we go along the way today. This is the last photo I have of us all together. The baby there is now 2.5. So we really need to get on top of our family photos. As Michelle shared, I'm an executive coach. I mostly work with charities, not-for-profits and public sector. And I'm part of a dual career couple, which the Fair Play method's really, really designed to support. And my interaction with Fair Play started with the birth of my tiny sleep thief. So back in 2018, my first child was born. And before she was born, I'd have said we were super equal, and equal in that very 50-50 kind of way, both doing our fair share of chores, not half of each chore, but the ones that suited us best. With Rose, my daughter, I took a very traditional 12-month maternity leave from my charity job. And what I didn't notice was over the course of that year, I'd become the expert parent. Once I was back at work, I had this niggle. Things didn't feel quite right. I was feeling a bit angry. And it wasn't until I came across the language of the mental load that it was like light bulb. This is a thing that I'm experiencing. Second shift, invisible work, emotional labor, whatever we call this concept, it is a challenge that often becomes apparent when we become a parent. And I told my husband about it. I was excited. I knew what was the problem with, but unfortunately, I then was just still mad at the world, and my husband was feeling guilty. That was all I'd accomplished through sharing this concept, and sharing possibly some of those wonderful cartoons that by a woman called Emma that you might have seen around about the mental load. Then I came across Fair Play. So this was only published in 2019, so it's fair that I didn't know about it in 2018. But this is an alternative system. And the goal is to spark conversations, and the book has now kind of turned into funding the Fair Play Policy Institute.
which is aiming to really disrupt things, to tackle the gendered division of labour, so to tackle broader things like the pay gap, for example. It's not about blame, it's not about keeping score, and my fare will be different from your fare, but it's a toolkit. And that's why I love sharing it in workshops, because I think having a tool rather than just being mad about the mental load is really helpful. So there's shared in the community, and hopefully shared on the link, and I can share afterwards as well, is a set of printable cards that can help us with getting started. And the sort of core principle of fair play is that what is visible, we value. Just like at work, what you measure and count, that's the work that gets done. It helps us see, this tool helps us see how and why we do things, the way we do. As you have the conversations that fair play facilitates, you might find yourself reflecting on how you were parented, the reason why you do the things you do with your children. At the core of fair play is a card deck of 100 cards. The cool thing is, it doesn't have to be 50-50. It's not about holding 50 each, because it's not about scorekeeping. What it's about is ownership. So when you hold a card, you hold it fully, from thinking about it, thinking what needs to be done, the planning, to doing it. That is the thing that makes the real difference between like having a list and you know, someone being in charge. It's the ownership. There are, of the 100 cards, 60 are possibly in play for couples, and then 40 are in play for couples with kids. So the fact that 40% of the cards only come into like action if you have kids shows why this is such a level up in mental load when we have children. 30 cards are daily grinds. So these are the highly repetitive tasks that happen at a very specific time. Some of the ones that well, I don't know about you, but I find the most difficult, like feeding kids. You've got to give them dinner every day. Like, you can't just skip dinner and have a bowl of cereal. I just love a bowl of Cocoa Pops for dinner, but it's not appropriate to give a 6-year-old a bowl of Cocoa Pops for dinner, unfortunately. So those daily grinds are the ones that often you want to re-deal the most. There are 3 cards that are called the happiness trio. These are really important: self-care, adult friendships, and unicorn space. You need to both hold these if you're in a couple. This is where resentment often creeps in. So a bit more on the cards. They're divided into 5 suits. Home has things like laundry. Out is things like transporting your kids places. Increasingly I'm doing that. It's good, it's got me more confident driving. But then caregiving, pets sit in there, but also a lot of tasks with kids sit in there. Magic, so magical beings is in there. Who takes care of the tooth fairy? And then wild, these are temporary cards. So things like a significant illness, your parents being kind of older and ailing, perhaps, job losses, new jobs, having a baby. They're in that wild. So they're the temporary cards. And you can possibly see just under here about outsourcing. Outsourcing absolutely does reduce execution of some of these tasks. Still got a mental load, because at the home end, for example, hiring a cleaner, you reduce the execution of the cleaning card, but you still have to do all the planning, and you still have to have like that mental load of knowing what needs to be done, sourcing someone, finding someone, vetting them, paying them, maybe getting them Christmas presents, things like that. It's not gone if you just outsource that card. So yes, it's a lot, but it is a lot already. Like, all of these things are happening. This gives you a system to the things that are a lot. 100 cards is a lot, but the first thing you do when you pick up fair play is try and put some cards down. So it's about customizing your deck, deciding what's in and what's out for your family, and what's in and what's out for your family in the season you're in. So we're here because we're parenting. If you've got, like me, very young kids, there might be more cards that you're like, in this season we're busy, we are not sleeping, we'll take some of these cards out. There might be things there. Unfortunately, you can't put out cards like laundry, you're probably going to have to keep. But you could get rid of things like the dry cleaning card. In our house, we've had some interesting conversations around like holiday cards, thank you cards, what the standards are for those, our community involvement, community engagement, things like that. It's about making a deliberate choice of like what's on your plate right now at this time. And at the other end of the system, people who then do fair play have all sorts of creative ways of tracking who is doing what. So in the top left here, that is was my fridge. All of these pens have faded. It's very annoying. I need to rewrite some of them. Some people use digital tools. Often people use visual tools because I think, like you find often in the workplace, although really challenging when hybrid, is having something visual can help people see what they're responsible for and flex. But it doesn't even have to be that complicated. The one on the bottom left here is just a simple printout. This is one of the early versions of Eve's list with her husband Seth. They were like, just put a letter by who's doing what and try it out. And you can see there, if you're on a big enough screen, it's got check-in Friday, 5 p.m, redeal. Now, I wanted to just share like a real life example of something that happened from before fair play, my family. One of the traps that can happen, it's the double up trap. So fireworks night is coming up. We have a newborn. So this is 2022. Eldest daughter loves fireworks. We're really excited. We found the perfect fireworks display. A school PTA is running some fireworks. Brilliant. They're like early evening, not like too big a scale, just right for a like then 4-year-old. We just sort of talk about it. We're like, should you get the tickets? Shall I get the tickets? You had to buy, because it was a PTA, you had to buy them, although you could buy them all over town, you had to buy them in cash. So eventually I was like, oh, I'm going to pass that shop. I can pick up the tickets. My husband was doing the driving. So I picked up the tickets, stuck them on the pin board at home, didn't really think anything else. I thought, right, I've done my job. I bought the tickets. My husband was kind of thinking about getting us there. The 5th of November that year was a Saturday. So we all get in the car on the Saturday night, driving across town. We're like, it's really quiet. We're like approaching the school. Clearly nothing going on at the school. The fireworks were the night before. And we had hyped all these children. We had got a newborn and a 4-year-old into the car at like, I don't know, 5:30 p.m. So it's like peak. Everyone's going nuts. Everyone's hungry. We were going to eat there. And this was a double up. Neither one of us had held complete responsibility for those tickets. I just wanted to cry. To like hold it together. I'm like looking in my phone, like, can we drive to another fireworks? It's bonfire night. Surely there is some somewhere. And we just have to say, I'm really sorry. We're turning around and going home. We made it this year to those fireworks. But this is why the ownership is important. So the principle with the cards is conception, planning, execution. You can sometimes think some people have sort of divided this as like conception being like emotional labor, planning is like mental labor, and then execution is the doing. It's about thinking of our homes as our most important organization. So conception, the behind the scenes mental load, like the overall knowledge of what your family needs. A question that Eve, the author of Fair Play Sometimes asks is like, how did the mustard get in your fridge? This is all about knowing like the brand of mustard that your kid likes. Then the planning is like actually having a system of some sort that gets it done. So whether that's having an online grocery order, whether that's how you plan grocery shopping into your week, it's having some sort of plan. And it might involve some sort of consultation with other, to use a more very worky term, like stakeholders. So maybe the kids have got a view. If you're grocery shopping, like you don't have to decide all the meals, you need a plan for getting everyone's input. And then execution is actually the easy bit, is the final step of getting the job done at the right time and meeting the standards. And standards is the other big bit. So this was one of the most meaningful bits actually for me when we started Fair Play. We were pretty kind of evenly-ish divided, but the standards of care. So for each card, so you probably might notice we haven't divided the cards yet, because that's where the brain goes at first, like, how do I get some of these cards off my plate? This step ensures you can both trust that all cards will be handled on time with competence and care. It's not about one person elevating things. And like I discovered when we talked about it at home, that even the term minimum standard of care was unhelpful for us. We had to rephrase it, because it's not about a flaw. It's just about understanding each other and what's important. So for each card, ask these questions. Like, if it's not immediately obvious, you could ask, like, how would a reasonable person do this card? What standards would they have? How did you do this growing up? Or what's important to you that's different about how you grew up? Like, what's the harm doing it this way, not doing it? Like, why? This can be where bringing in a facilitator can be quite helpful for asking the questions and working through things. But I found that we went for a long walk as well. I was on, we're sort of overlapping parental leave with our second baby. We went for a really long walk and just talked through some of the cards and what was important to us, because this enables you to, either one of you, to hold the card because you really understand what's important. And it can be as simple as, like, we actually had a conversation about, like, dinner needs to have a vegetable, because we just had a baby and we were just, it's all standards are disintegrated. So we were trying to bring them up a level. This can also be renegotiated over time. So when you're holding a wild card, coming back to your standards is useful. So say first year of an infant's life, the amount of takeout you eat in 1 week might be higher than you're comfortable for as a normal standard for your family. Or the amount of fried food, the amount that the air fryers use, whatever it is, you can adapt these standards. And I think particularly at the period of life where lots of people are in their like 30s, 40s, young kids, there's lots of job change. We all know there's lots of job losses and job change and people moving around happening as well. Lots of us also have older parents. There's actually rarely a moment when anyone I know isn't holding a wild card. So checking back in on those standards and what works for your family is really important. So I've talked about there being 100 cards, loads of cards. The whole system can be a bit overwhelming. What I'd really like to suggest is that you take one card, like, away from today, and think about trying to have the conversation in your home about one card. If you've got older children, you can have this conversation with an older child. You can bring them in of, like, how do you think we should handle this card? This is all of the cards except the wild card on the screen now. And I can pop something in the chat with the list as well. Or the website's got a really nice interactive tool that sort of guides you through CPE for each card as well. But just picking one, if you want, you could literally just close your eyes, pick one on the pick one on the screen, see which one you get, and have some conversations. Like, is this a card we both value? So should this even be in? What's the minimum standard of care for this card? What does conception, planning, and execution look like for this card? Like, what is this card completely done? Like a conversation we had, which as soon as you say it sounds really obvious, but part of the bins card became cleaning the bins. Just differentiating really clearly defining responsibilities, like you would in a workplace, of like, who's responsible, what does done look like, what's good look like. Then you can deal the card, who's holding it, and it's not forever, it's for however long you agree. And that is the last point, agreeing when you will redeal. So that's what, I'd like to send you away with. I'd like to just share how this fits in with the workplace and with the overall kind of way that I work. My goal is for the people I work with to feel calm and productive and have time to spare and put down that guilt. And this mental load can really get in the way in the workplace. So a whole segment of how I work with people is this balanced home toolkit, and Fair Play sits within that. So I'm tentatively calling mental offload at the moment. I then work with people around time and boundaries, which are very core to Fair Play as well. It's all about what are the boundaries around each card, who's doing what to free up time. And then finally, I work with people around being able to lead with confidence, because I'm commonly working with people who are navigating the early years or perhaps are returning from parental leave. So that delegation overlaps again with Fair Play a little bit, because sometimes the mentality we come to this is like, how do I delegate to hustle away, which is all about them being really clear. So I share resources about Fair Play regularly. This QR will take you to my Instagram if you're on Instagram and want to stay connected. But at this point, I can hear myself going a little croaky, so I'm going to have a sip of my drink and hand over to Michelle and questions.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. That is so interesting. There was a card up there that I was immediately thinking of, which is the homework school supplies thing. That is like a struggle at the moment. So I think that's probably going to be my one. I'm going to start with, like, let's figure this out. Because we also have like different standards. So I love that like idea of the standard of care as well.
Lots of people take it in different ways. So some people go kind of chunk by chunk. So you could start with the cards that are potentially going to get you what that you're using really all the time are those daily grind. So there's 30 of them. So you could sit down with those 30 and just check in, are these all in play? Definitely like take breaks. So one of the principles of the method is about regular check-ins. So if you could find a time in the week where that's going to turn into those regular check-ins, but start off with use it to working through building the method to build that habit of that time together. It doesn't have to be a massive chunk of time. It could be like 15 minutes, like some point in the week, like for couples who both work from home some of the week, maybe you agree to like meet at a lunchtime like once a week, or lots of people like a Sunday evening, and making it nice, you know, like if you get a weekly takeout, maybe you do it over the takeout, maybe you have a glass of wine, maybe you put some music on. You're tackling the cards, and the prize of being on top of things, having time for adult friendship, self-care, unicorn space, like, is worth it. But definitely like agreeing you're working towards something good, you're already handling all these cards, whichever ones are in play for your family, you're already doing it. So it's not about creating more work, it's about sort of systemizing that. So I think first time I came at it as like, we've got to do this properly, like follow the method. And I would say, no, take the bits that resonate and the bits that work for your family. What if we can't agree? Any tips for handling conflicts? And then on to like holds a card but drops the ball and doesn't seem to care. So I think all of this comes back to like values and communication in your relationship. So agreeing the minimum standards of care, getting out of trying to step up a level from the detail into the like, okay, what's important to us about this? Trying to find some sort of match of like, we agree that this is important for our family. What's important? Why is it important? There's like a coaching tool, the 5 whys, where you just ask why 5 times basically, but to get to some depth, right? There's you're a couple, there's probably some values alignment somewhere. Like that's, if you got together, like finding that together, sharing your own experience of like why you've got your position, like what was it like when you were growing up, like understanding the other person. It's the two of you against the card. If you can't agree, like, okay, then some of the questions like what would a reasonable person do? Potentially bringing in a fair play facilitator. If this is, this all comes from the assumption that this is all on a level kind of in a relationship where there is communication and it's effective, right? If you can't communicate without it's like a lot of defensiveness or like real challenges in communication, then that's where like actually like maybe fair play isn't the fix. Maybe like some sort of couples therapy type thing is the fix. Or maybe it's about being like, we'll come back to that card. Like maybe it's not like that serious. This card is particularly triggering for both of you. Like it's just something where you really disagree. Maybe trying to get alignment on something that feels easier, feels like a better way in. Like make it easy for you. Don't make it hard. Don't start with the card that you fight about all the time. And start when emotion is low and cognition is high. This is why I suggest like, can you have lunch together or Sunday night? Like don't be having the conversation about how you get your kids ready for school while getting your kids ready for school and out the door. Like getting in and out of the house has got to be, well, maybe not so much in, out of the house has got to be one of like peak stress moments, right? That is not the time to be discussing what is and isn't working. Like come back to it later, like in a chill way when you're both in a good place. Holds the card but drops the ball and doesn't seem to care. So the values alignment around the card, that will be what helps you to trust that they're going to get it done, and then to see why it's so important to you. So having that sense of agreement at the beginning about what seeing it through to completion means, understanding why it's important to the other. Like a really small one, we had a conversation about buying kids clothes at home and we were talking about pajamas, and like I would have just bought like leggings and t-shirts like in bulk and just put something that fit on our kids. But as we had a conversation about it, my partner shared like really wanting to get them matching pajamas, and initially I'm like, well, that sounds ridiculous. But actually when we talked about it, it was something that he had really wanted and didn't ever get and can give. I'm like, oh, that's really, yeah, okay, yeah, we can give, that is nice. So now, but had we not had that conversation and I just heard that request and been like, no, they just need something on their bodies because I don't think that's important. But knowing why it was important meant I saw it through.
Really like the idea of the system that you kind of like takes it away from, but you know, it's like kind of separate to both of you. So like once it's decided, it's like, okay, it's up to you. Kind of like work, right? Like this is, you know what you're supposed to do at work. If you don't do it, then that's on you. But it means you don't have to have one person kind of like moaning at the other, or you know. I think
the check-in gives you a place to talk about like what is and isn't working as well. Okay. And like sense check that you both understand like what doing this task to completion is. And in a non kind of emotional space.
Yeah.
I can see question. So teenagers. Yeah, brilliant tool for conversations with teenagers. So you could use the cards. So 13 and 16, like absolutely, they can hold cards. The thing with doing with children is a little bit like at work. While they might have like some responsibility, like you maintain like a higher level of accountability than you would if you were separating them with an adult partner. But of like, you know, that sort of oversight and support that they're getting on, like a kind of new person at work. Like you wouldn't just be like, okay, the outcome I want is X, bye, off you go. Don't do that with your 13-year-old, giving them responsibility for like something really important around the house. Be there with them, but definitely the idea of holding things end to end rather than them just doing tasks that you ask them to do and doing the execution. I came across my daughter, actually. She was changing a toilet roll the other day. I was like, yes, she definitely doesn't do it all the time, and she uses like 50 sheets every time she goes to the toilet, so it's good that she changes it. But like spotting the things that need to be done. So for example, a kid having you wouldn't give them responsibility probably for like the fact that cleaning is one card is a bit silly anyway, but you know, say they're responsible for a room, and spotting what needs to be done, spotting that a cleaning product has run out, things like that, trying to get that idea. Yeah, you could definitely use this to divide the cards and divide what you do around the home and get their help. Compromise seems to be dropping my standards and learning to live with mess. So this is hard, but is like understanding and agreeing standards between you. So getting under the why, right? It might seem really obvious to you why a bin needs to be clean, but going like why? There's possibly stuff there around health, around looking after your home, not having to replace the bin because it's like melted under the bin juices. So it might be a financial one. Getting under the why and agreeing, like why are they comfortable with the mess, and like what would be reasonable? Would a reasonable person agree? And by default, they absolutely do land quite often on women. So yeah, but like I think thinking about the prize here of disrupting, this is a sort of cycle breaking tool that you don't have to go with the default. Like when I became aware of mental load, that was what got me thinking about it. But unless you have a replacement system, like yeah, you do go with the default.
Hey, thanks for today. I really liked what you were saying about trying to make some of those conversations fun as well, because I know we have, well, in the diary we have a weekly check-in on like a Sunday night, and it happens some weeks, it doesn't happen, but also it's straight after the kids have gone to bed, and you know, just the energy to go sit down and talk about something is zero, right? So yeah, I like that. Definitely take that away. Maybe the Sunday night takeaway will come back. I think I wanted to ask a bit about your experience around. You know, I understand the concept about taking the whole card, but with some of those cards, as I was scanning through the screen, there are a ton of subtasks as well, and some of them could be their own cards and themselves, right? And I know that I know things that are really, you know, I'm good at taking over, and you know, I get hyper focused in a task, or you know, get, you know, able to research topics. I mean, one thing we're talking about at the moment is like, I don't know, buying a new coffee machine or something. I will get stuck in like analysis paralysis of like never being able to decide between 2 or 3 coffee machines, and what does it matter in the end? It's a machine that's going to make coffee, right? But that will cause like a friction. But you know, I won't be able to close the task. I know I won't be able to like press go, right? Press buy. So I don't know, like in your experience with some of these cards, how important is it to really define what the whole task is that you're taking away as well, right? I can see part of that being as part of like the minimum standards, but also part of it going, you know, understanding in your couple like what things you know you can close and what things you can't. And I guess maybe it's also about checking back. But I would just be interested if you've ever chunked things up underneath those cards, or if you've always said, you know, one person takes the whole card.
Definitely there are some cards in there that are massive, like cleaning. So like in our home we've chunked that up. Like rooms is an obvious way to chunk that up. You can create your own cards as well, where something comes up. So like we're going to get our son prisoned at some point, and recognition of that being a piece of work, we've created a card for that. You could probably, although thinking about it, you could call that like the spirituality card. But yeah, there definitely is something about you can chunk cards up. Really one important way you can chunk cards is kid split. So if you've got more than one child, that is a time it is okay to split the card. and take like a child each, or like two, depending on how many kids you have, like however you divide them up. But like there are times you can't both be in the same place at the same time with both children. So that's an option for splitting cards. You could also redeal that card, right? So there's like a home supplies card, I think, which I think buying a coffee machine would fit under. You could agree that you get it to the point where there's like a short list of 3, and then you hand it over to your partner who's better able to make the decision and push it over the line. Things can be, you can redeal cards, you can move them between you. We've divided the meals up, I think, a bit differently. I do dinners. My husband does weekend lunches, which I think lunches might be a card, I'm not sure. But we've divided it up sort of differently of how it works with the flow of the week. And then occasionally, like this weekend, we were seeing my in-laws, so they were taking care of lunch. So my husband took care of dinner. It's just sort of staying on top of who's doing what. And definitely move it and make it work for you. Experiment with it. It's kind of, I think it's a tool that works well when held quite lightly and applied in a way that works with your family.
So one of the questions I had is how you kind of, and maybe this, you've sort of answered this to what Jonathan asked, which is when you have different capacities. So if someone is able to do a lot, like work, all day and then just can do more for whatever reason. Maybe it's physical, maybe it's mental, maybe it's how do you, because everybody's like that, right? Everybody has different fundamental capacities.
So I think it's about checking, like a little bit sense checking.
Okay.
What's real capacity there. So when I read this question from you of like, there's this idea, right, that women can multitask better and our time is often treated like sand, and sort of paid work treated more like diamonds and finite. So there is a first level of just sense checking of like, is this true? Like, are we like undervaluing, like commonly like male partner thinking that like they're somehow incompetent at home when they actually have very competent jobs and are very competent, given the full authority to just get on with something and trusted they would. Assuming kind of all that aside, like absolutely, like my fare is not your fare. It's not 50-50, about 50-50. And like in a lot of homes, people work different hours, are available different hours. You're taking on different things, so work to what suits your family. Even like energy wise, like I'm just useless in the evening. I'm very tired. I fell asleep actually putting my son to bed last night and just stayed there. Didn't get up again. Whereas my husband does a lot of the cards he holds, he's set up in a way that he does them like at the end of the day, which I just could not possibly get done. So I would do them differently, I think, if I helped them to make it work. So I think it's about starting with like reality and like this not keeping score. It's not about holding like half the cards, and that will ebb and flow and change over time. So things like starting a new job doesn't take any more time, assuming you're doing a job with the same number of hours. But when you're in the early days of a new job, it takes a lot of headspace. So perhaps not a great time to be holding loads of the cards that take a lot of headspace. Like, could those be redealt for that period? And maybe some of the home ones, like you go, okay, right, we're going to have more takeout, more freezer meals. Make this a bit easier for us while we're in this period. And then check in and be like, actually, we're through that. Like, we have a 2.5-year-old now. And I'm like, actually, like, we can do things when I'm not asleep, do things in the evening, I guess. Because typically we put him to bed and he's asleep.
Nice.
So you can things change, and that's where the check-ins come in.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I feel like
oh, sorry.
I was going to say, you had a question about getting your partner on board, I think.
Yes. So how do you get to engage? Yeah, what if you're getting resistance for doing the whole system?
Yeah. So I think when I read that question was like, my thought was, how can you make, so there's a bit in the book, and that I've shared a bit on before in other spaces, about kind of working out who sort of your partner's personality, like what might entice them. Like, is it about recognizing what's already happening? Thank you, Jonathan. And but do get in touch if you've got any questions. Is it about making it fun? Is it about giving independence, like to get on with it? But then how can you, the first job is not dividing the cards. It's like, I've found this thing about like how we do this bit of life easier, and like what's in it, thinking about what's in it for them. Like maybe it's that you're a nicer person to be around, because if you're feeling resentment and feeling like you're holding all the mental load, maybe you're not being very nice to your partner. Like, how's the resentment showing up? So it's, I think putting yourself a bit in their shoes. It's not all about reducing what you do. It's actually about, as a family setup, giving them the chance to be more involved as well, and like potentially more involved in their kids, have more ownership, not be like, feel like you're the project manager and expert of the home.
Yeah. I really like the idea as well about the values and the kind of the wild cards, because I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this theme this month, is that we very rarely articulate our values. And so, and even if you've been with your partner for years, you kind of feel like you have the same values, but then there might be things that you both really value, but in that particular period of time, like you were saying about the takeaways and things, right? Like I used to cook every single meal from scratch and like love cooking, but it just got so untenable. And everything you cook, your kids just don't eat anyway, even though somebody else cooks it. So yeah, it just becomes so frustrating. And then you just have to go, okay, we do really value good home cooked wholesome food, but sometimes at this point, for this period of time, there's going to be a lot of chicken nuggets. So yeah, I love that idea that you're not letting go of the value, you're just adapting for this period of time.
Yeah. Or like, if you really love cooking, like, is there something about then that space to do that in an enjoyable way, like not for your kids? Like, that might, cooking can be unicorn space, which is we've not, is a whole other like workshop in and of itself, but it is about curiosity and connection and completion. And like, cooking something wonderful from scratch like can be a wonderful thing to do, creative for ourselves, but not in the context of the relentless daily grind of having to put something on the table at 5 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely doing that. I love the way you divide your meals up though, because that is like, we kind of naturally do to a certain extent, but not all three stages. So that's quite nice how it's like.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't think about weekend lunches.
Yeah.
I know I will be fed.
Yeah.
And like, it came out of a conversation about me just being like, I can't feed any more people. Like, it was feeling really relentless, and I like cooking, but I just wasn't enjoying it.
Yeah.
So I was like, where could this work? And it, for us, because evenings didn't make sense for my partner to take on, because the nature of his work and hours, like, it would mean maybe no one got fed in the evening because he was at work. But actually, he was like, I could take on weekend lunches, and then I don't have to do anything. I know I'm going to be fed. We were in McDonald's yesterday. I got fed.
Yeah.
But it's just one less. I don't have to think about it at all. I don't have to think about is there food in. where are we going to eat, what are we going to eat. It's just free. I just show up.
Oh, amazing.
But much like he does, right, for dinner.
Yeah.
So I've made that commitment that there will be a meal.
Nice. I'm really excited to get started on it, because I think it's a really great system.
And it is big, and please do come back with questions. Feel free to send me a message on I shared the Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, or my emails, my website's the same, thefloat.space. You can email me as well, and got a whole kind of toolbox of fair play tools that I'm very happy to share, and lots on my socials as well about kind of tools along the way for people who are at different stages of this. Fair Play themselves have lots of free guides for different stages as well, like welcoming a child, preparing a wedding or celebration, work with lots of partners around different stages as well. I know they're doing lots of work in the US around different caring stages. We have a partner that runs a company that's all around divorcing, actually. Obviously hope none of our couples end up there, but we've got loads of resources, so I can probably always point you in the direction if anyone's looking for specific resources as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and thanks for everyone attending.